just want to welcome everyone to this conference call over the next hour. The conference call's title is Beginning to Understand the Impacts of Harmful Algal Blooms on California Fisheries, and is being hosted by California Ocean Science Trust. My name is Kelly Sace, and myself and my colleague Rochelle Fisher will be supporting today's discussion. And before we turn things over to Ocean Science Trust, we just wanted to highlight a few housekeeping items. Currently, all of the call participants' lines are muted, so please don't be alarmed if you say hello and we aren't able to hear you. Once we get into the discussion portion of the call, we will open the lines to Q&A mode. In addition to providing and encouraging folks on the call to provide input and ideas during the conversation and sort of discussion portion of the call, you're also welcome to send questions, comments, or concerns throughout the duration of the call to info@strategicearth.com. That's info@strategicearth.com. We will try our best, Rochelle and I, to convey the emailed information during the call, but please note that all email correspondence will be shared with Ocean Science Trust following the call and will be captured as part of a publicly available key themes document that we'll have summarizing today's call. The call is being recorded and will be made available following this discussion on Ocean Science Trust's website. Please, for those of you that have not gone on Ocean Science Trust's website, we highly recommend it, oceansciencetrust.org, and that is a location where you'll find materials for today's meeting. If you go onto the main page and kind of scroll down, there is a box called Announcements, and there's a title saying Tackling Harmful Algal Blooms in California Fisheries. And when you click on that, you'll get into more information about today's call and background information about this effort in general. Rochelle and I will be playing a support role during today's call and look forward to a constructive and open dialogue and discussion. We'll be referencing a number of documents, again, as I mentioned, that are available on the Ocean Science Trust website. That includes the call agenda, an initial list of questions that have been shared by industry leaders, and an initial set of frequently asked questions that we're really here to have hopefully a really thoughtful conversation about. Again, please email us, Rochelle and I, at info@strategicearth.com if you have any trouble finding these materials. And just before I hand it over to Erin, I just wanted to highlight a few ground rules for the discussion portion of the call to just remind everyone, and even during the presentation part of the call, to state your name before speaking, to be courteous and try not to talk over the voices of others, being mindful of our timeline of an hour call, and to please make your comments and questions brief, relevant, and to the point. And please, as you can, try to avoid repeating any questions or ideas that have already been stated. Erin, I'd love to pass it your way, and thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelly. We are really excited to host today's call in an effort to collectively begin to understand harmful algal blooms and their impacts to California fisheries. And we just first really want to take the
Entry and exit chimes are off.
To thank everyone for joining us today and getting this conversation started. First off, I just want to introduce myself and the rest of the Ocean Science Trust team on the call today. My name is Erin Romano, and I'm an associate scientist here at Ocean Science Trust. Since joining our team almost 5 years ago, I've led many of our projects related to advancing the role of science and fisheries management. We also have Hayley Carter, a program scientist here who leads our peer reviews for the state's fisheries management plans. You'll be hearing from her a little bit later. Sitting in as well today is Emily Knight, our senior program manager. For the past 3 years, she's led the West Coast Ocean Acidification and Hypoxia Science Panel and works closely with the Ocean Protection Council Science Advisory Team. And lastly, I am really pleased to note that we have the Ocean Science Trust's new Executive Director, Tom Maloney, here. In his role as Executive Director, Tom is the Science Advisor to the Ocean Protection Council and also a member of the Ocean Protection Council Science Advisory Team. So I'll just turn it over to Tom to say a couple of words.
Thank you, Erin. I think this will capture me. Thank you, Erin. I'm really excited to be on this call. I had the pleasure of working with the working group a little bit already. This is such an important issue for particularly the fishing community and the fishing industry that I think getting your feedback, making sure the FAQs are appropriately answering a lot of the questions that are out there, and then, really starting to distill the science that's going to inform this question is, something I can bring back to the Ocean Protection Council as science advisor. So really excited to be here and look forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. So today's call, our intention is for this to be the start of opening the lines of the communication between Ocean Science Trust, fishing industry leadership, and others so that we can share details about what we're up to at Ocean Science Trust, our thinking about this issue, and really to start to learn and continue to learn about industry questions and priorities related to harmful algal blooms and fisheries, as well as discussing the best way that we can continue an open dialogue moving forward. Briefly, I just want to note what's on the agenda for today's call. First up is an overview of Ocean Science Trust and our partners in this effort. Next, we will talk a little bit about the development of the FAQ document and the process for that, as well as the Science of HAB's recommendations within this document. Next, we'll be opening up the lines for a discussion about your priority questions, and then we'll be wrapping up by sharing some additional details about another product that's being developed with the scientific working group, as well as discuss how we can continue to maintain open lines of communications with all of you on today's call and hopefully beyond. Lastly, before moving on, I just want to note that it might be important to acknowledge up front that the purpose of this call is to help inform the science-based questions and answers that will then inform management discussions. So with that, I just want to move on to the next agenda item, the overview of Ocean Science Trust and the Ocean Protection Council Science Advisory Team HAB's working group. First off, Ocean Science Trust is, for those of you who haven't worked with us before, is an independent nonprofit based in Oakland, California. We are not a government agency, and we do not have any regulatory or management authority. Instead, we are kind of unique in that we're legislatively mandated to exist and provide independent science to the state of California. We frequently deliver this science in close collaboration with academic, federal, and state scientists, as well as community members such as yourselves. Additionally, we do not advocate for any particular policy or regulation. Our main objective is to provide sound and rigorous science to assist managers, policymakers, and community members in decision-making. As you are all aware, in 2015 and 2016, elevated levels of domoic acid led to the closure of the Dungeness crab, rock crab, and razor clam fisheries. And it also impacted other major commercial and recreational fisheries in California, including anchovies, mussels, and urchins. As part of the response to these events, the California Ocean Protection Council convened the Interagency Marine Harmful Algal Bloom Task Force to work together to have a coordinated response to harmful algal bloom events in California due to their importance as well as cross-jurisdictional nature. This interagency task force is only agency members. It includes the Ocean Protection Council, the Fish and Game Commission, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the California Department of Public Health, and the Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment. As part of their work, the Interagency Task Force asked the California Ocean Science Trust to take on two tasks as funded by the Ocean Protection Council. The first is what we're mostly here to discuss today, which is leading the development of a document that addresses frequently asked questions, or FAQs, submitted by fishing leadership, agencies, managers, regulators, and others. And the timeline for this frequently asked questions document is really driven by the need and desire from agency folks and community members to have something to share in advance of the Joint Committee on Fisheries and Aquaculture hearing that's taking place on August 10th. So that's the first thing. The second is that we're asked by the Interagency Task Force to convene a science working group of the Ocean Protection Council Science Advisory Team. And this group is working to explore the science supporting California's existing HAB and biotoxin monitoring in the marine environment along the coast of California. And secondly, they are providing scientific guidance on how the scientific community can add capacity and support state needs. And we'll hear a little bit more about the details of that later in the call. This working group, the scientific working group, was established by soliciting nominations from the full OPC Science Advisory Team, as well as the Interagency HAB Task Force. Members on this group are Dr. Dave Caron, Professor of Biological Sciences at the University of Southern California, Dr. Bill Coughlin, Senior Research Scientist at the Romberg-Tiburon Center for Environmental Studies at San Francisco State University, Dr. Rafe Kudela, Professor at Ocean Sciences Department, University of California, Santa Cruz, and lastly, Dr. Greg Langley, Senior Environmental Scientist at the California Department of Public Health, and a member of the Interagency Marine HAB Task Force. And again, this working group's scope of work, so just more details about what they're up to, are available on Ocean Science Trust's website at www.oceansciencetrust.org. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hayley Carter to talk to us a little bit about the initial list of frequently asked questions in the science of HABs in California fisheries.
Thank you. Again, I'm Hayley Carter. I'm a program scientist here at Ocean Science Trust, and appreciate everyone's patience. We wanted to share some background information to really set up this call. We know you've joined the call to share your perspectives, and we'll definitely get to that. And we'll make sure that this background information can ensure all participants are entering into the conversations with the same information. So, as Erin mentioned, the short-term product that we're producing here at Ocean Science Trust is we've been asked to develop a frequently asked questions document. The goal of the frequently asked questions document is to provide a common understanding of how harmful algal blooms and the biotoxins that they produce are currently being monitored by the state. Also talk about the science supporting the state's action levels for domoic acid. There's been a lot of interest in better understanding the science behind those, and details about how harmful algal blooms have impacted California fisheries during the 2015-2016 season. To do this, we're working with our federal and state partners, as well as academic scientists, to gather existing information into a single document. We realize a lot of this information has been spread out across multiple agencies, so we're compiling that into one resource. We are also committed to working with the fishing industry and everyone here on the call today in calls like this, and in addition to other ways that you might suggest of better engaging the public, to ensure that this document reflects your priorities and interests as well. So as a first step for this frequently asked questions document, we needed to gain a better understanding of the types of priority questions and the information needs that the fishing industry and community members have. So beginning spring of this year, lists of questions started to roll in to various audiences. These have been informed by a number of conversations that were outside of Ocean Science Trust, including the Office of Senator Mike McGuire, the Joint Committee on Fisheries and Aquaculture, who are holding a hearing on August 10th, the Dungeness Crab Task Force Executive Committee and committee members, the commercial fishermen of Santa Barbara, as well as other fishing industry leads, and the Interagency Harmful Algal Bloom Task Force. So lots of conversations circling. These questions were then passed along to us, and from that larger list, we pulled out questions that can be addressed in this short time frame. So the primary goal of today's call is to confirm that we are on the right track with these priority questions in the frequently asked questions document in the short term, and see if there's additional questions that folks wanted to contribute. So the factors that we used to identify the questions for the frequently asked questions document in the short term were questions that we heard were high priorities from the community members, as well as questions that can be answered in the short turnaround time, and as well as that does not require additional academic research. So we'd like to turn your attention to the initial list of the frequently asked questions. This should be available on Ocean Science Trust's website at www.oceansciencetrust.org. If you visit our homepage and scroll to the bottom, there's a highlight that links to our page that describes this whole project that we're producing. And also you can send an email to info@strategicearth.com, and they can email you a PDF copy. So we'd like to take some time at this point in the call to open up the lines for questions and also learn about your thoughts on the short list of questions in the FAQ that we're going to be addressing. I'm going to pass it over to Kelly and Rochelle, who are going to lead this discussion.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Hayley. It's really fantastic. And Erin, really wonderful. So just wanted to acknowledge that that was, a lot of information that was just shared, hopefully some very informative and valuable information both on who Ocean Science Trust is, the role of the Ocean Protection Council Science Advisory Team, Harmful Algal Bloom Working Group, and then sort of where Ocean Science Trust and its partners are in the development of some frequently asked questions. I just want to acknowledge, sort of remind us of the ground rules that we talked about at the beginning of the call. Just a reminder for folks to put themselves on mute, *6 if you do not have a mute button on your phone. And I'm going to toggle through, so bear with me. I'm going to first just know that the very first toggle that I go to opens all of the lines, and then I'm going to move to question and answer mode. So if it gets a little noisy for a minute, don't be alarmed, and we will just continue to move on through. So hold on one sec. Perfect. OST, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So folks should be able to now unmute yourself. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. And I will also continue, if anybody has any trouble getting through, please don't hesitate to email us at info@strategicearth.com. Ultimately, what we're looking for is for those of you that have been able to access the initial list of frequently asked questions, which perhaps we can read through in a moment if folks are having trouble taking a look at those, but we'd love to learn about whether or not those frequently asked questions are on point, if they resonate, if they're of high priority, if there are other questions that you would like Ocean Science Trust and its partners to be thinking about. That kind of thing would be really welcomed. I'm going to, Rochelle, would you mind pressing the toggle for muting and sort of scrolling through the mute options? I'm worried that it's not working on my end. The information is at the top of our agenda.
Yes, just one moment. I'm getting there now. And I think I'm looking at the wrong one. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and so would you mind doing it one more time? Perfect. Did it tell you that Q&A mode is now on?
Yes, so Q&A mode is now on. So if you would like to speak now, please press *6 to get yourself off of mute. And we would love to hear questions, comments about the frequently asked questions. And again, if you have not received them, if you can't find them on Ocean Science Trust's website, please email info@strategicearth.com, and we will send them to you right away.
Thoughts from folks on the call? And we can certainly go back and open the lines up fully to make sure if anyone's having trouble getting through. I'm wondering if Ocean Science Trust, maybe as a first step, would you mind reading out the sort of the frequently asked questions, the initial set of frequently asked questions that have sort of, I don't want to say risen to the top, but ultimately fall within those two criteria or considerations that you're thinking about. One, those that were identified as high priority for the industry that you've heard from thus far, and two, questions that could be answered in a timely manner that didn't require additional research. Would you mind just going through those sort of slowly?
Sure, happy to. so what you'll see in that FAQ document of frequently asked questions that you can download are that these questions are falling into 4 different topic areas. So I'll just read those topic areas and then go through and talk about the questions that are within each of those. The first is HABs and seafood toxin monitoring efforts in California. The second are domoic acid in California fisheries. The third is human health and seafood safety concerns. And the fourth is California's fishery and seafood toxin management. So within that first category, harmful algal blooms and biotoxin monitoring efforts in California, there are 4 questions that we are addressing, and these are: how are harmful algal blooms and associated biotoxins being monitored along the West Coast? The second is: where can HAB monitoring and active bloom information be found? The third is: are HAB events increasing in frequency, and are there links between climate change and HAB events? And the fourth is: can we predict future HAB events and impacts to fisheries? Under the second topic...
Erin, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Before we go on to the next theme, I'm thinking it might be more digestible to just pause after the first. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Fantastic. So, folks, again, sort of that harmful algal bloom and biotoxin monitoring efforts in California. How are harmful algal blooms associated biotoxins being monitored? How can HAB monitoring and active bloom information be found? Are there events that are increasing in frequency? How do we predict the future of events? Are there other questions that folks on the call have sort of under this umbrella? And certainly it can go beyond, and we can think about where it might fit in moving forward. But any thoughts on whether those are the right questions to be asking, if there's anything that should be added or removed? And again, a reminder, *6 if you would like to chime in. And Rochelle, I might just ask if you don't mind toggling through. You're going to do that right now. That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, this is Tim Sloan from PCFFA.
Hey, Tim. So nice to hear a voice. Hi, welcome. Please tell us things.
How you guys doing? I'm actually just ever so slightly unclear on what's going on here. I'm looking at the list of FAQs and wondering whether these are the cream that has already risen to the top, or if we're to look at these and try and inform you guys as to which of this list needs to rise to the top.
A great question. Ocean Science Trust, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the answer is both and. So these are the questions that we are tackling right now that are for sure getting answers. And so we want to hear if any of these are particularly of interest to you, or if there's a gap here and we missed something that is not on this list.
All right. And all of these questions will be answered in the August 5th FAQ?
Correct.
I think you guys have a great start here, and I think that the thing to keep in mind is that it all goes back to, A, whether the fishery is going to be opened or closed, and B, whether people are going to get sick if there's some sort of gray area. In my mind, those are the two biggest concerns with going fishing on crabs that might be tainted. And it's a business predictability issue, and then it's a long-term market issue. So I think if you just take those two guideposts and go through these questions and think about, are they going to answer to the vast majority of the fleet, whether we're going to be able to predict whether the fishery will be opened or closed, or whether these questions, will help inform the human health and safety aspect. I think those are the ones that you should really be driving at.
Great, thank you for that. That's really helpful feedback, and I think that our goal is that these questions can start to inform some of those bigger questions that are perhaps a little bit harder to answer, such as how much can we predict, but that this is definitely the starting point for answering that. questions such as those.
Other thoughts from folks on the line related to maybe building off of what Tim just mentioned? Any other thoughts on the questions that Ocean Science Trust just posed? Thoughts from the group? Maybe as
and it appears,
oh yeah, please.
I was just going to say, it appears that we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. So if you are trying to get through the line, you're pressing *6 and you're trying to speak and it's not coming through, please email info@strategicearth.com and we'll see what we can do on this end. But yeah, there might be some issues with the technology.
Thanks,
And this
Michelle.
is Tim Sloan again. Can you guys hear me again?
Yes, we can.
I'll note that I unmuted myself, but then I also had to press *6 to get through.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that clarification. Yes, so it is a two-step process. You're automatically defaulted to *6. If you use the mute button on your phone, you need to unmute and then still press *6 to come through the line. Thanks so much, Tim. Ocean Science Trust, would you be comfortable perhaps moving into the second theme, domoic acid and California fisheries?
Happy to.
Thank you.
Yep. So for the second section of the 4, that will be in the FAQ document. It's under the topic of domoic acid and California fisheries specifically. And the questions we're addressing are, what is the history of domoic acid toxicity in seafood in the U.S.? Second, what are the current 2016 domoic acid action levels in California? What is the scientific rationale behind the action levels for domoic acid toxicity in seafood? Next, what are the current 2015-2016 season criteria for opening and closing the Dungeness crab fishery based on the action levels? Where can information be found on California's current domoic acid crab monitoring plan? What plan do other West Coast states adhere to? Next up is, where are the domoic acid biotoxin monitoring sites in California? How were the Dungeness crab sites selected? How frequently are crab biotoxin sites sampled? What determines how frequently sampling occurs? How is spacing of sites considered? How are samples collected within a site, such as distance, buffer zones, etc.? Does sampling control for potential differences in domoic acid levels between male and female Dungeness crabs? How is domoic acid detected in seafood samples? How are the samples processed during testing, i.e., are whole crabs homogenized in seawater or freshwater? Are viscera tested separately from crab tissue? And last, how are government agencies responding to the 2015-2016 shell fishery closures in California, e.g. Dungeness and rock crab and razor clams?
Thanks so much, Erin. So again, inviting members of the public who are on the call to provide any thoughts or feedback on that really extensive list of questions that Erin just went through. A reminder that this list of questions lives on Ocean Science Trust's website, and if anyone is having any trouble, to please feel free to email us at info@strategicearth.com if you have any technical difficulties, questions, comments, concerns, and we will convey them via the phone. Okay. It is that fine balance of trusting. Yeah, please, Rochelle.
Yes, we are. We did get an email saying that someone is having trouble unmuting their line. Maybe I should just read this. Should I? Or sorry, Kelly. Are we going to read questions out loud, or do we want to?
I think it would be great.
Perfect.
Yep, we absolutely have the bandwidth to do that.
That sounds great. So this one came from Wayne Kotow, and he said there's a lot of confusion at the retail level when our customers going to the store. When customers are going to the store and they see crab, they don't know where they're from, and if they are safe. How can we do a better job getting out to the retailers and customers, especially in the Asian markets? Thank you, Wayne, for your question.
That is a great question, and similar to some other questions that I think we'll get. What we're hoping is that this FAQ document is a place where people can go to get some kind of ground information across the board in terms of sampling, but also in terms of understanding how the health and safety seafood concerns work. And also for consumers to understand that they are being protected based on how regulations are working here. So I think that this will start to form the basis for bigger conversations like that perhaps are outside of the scientific community but are between fishing community members, industry, consumers, and the state to kind of work on that problem together.
That's really great. Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Wayne, for that great question, and thank you for your patience and emailing it in. Again, apologies, I'm not quite sure. We're trying to toggle the controls on this end. For whatever reason, they are just a little sticky, but we really appreciate everyone's patience and having the backup option to email us at info@strategicearth.com, as Wayne did, and we can absolutely read out your question within the given time frame, and all questions that are asked via email will be captured as part of our key theme summary for today. Erin, would it make sense to move into the third theme of the frequently asked questions list?
Sure, and Wayne gave us a great preview. It's also a much shorter list. The third section is health and seafood safety concerns, and there are two main questions being addressed under this in the FAQ document. The first is, after consumption of crab meat, is toxin accumulation additive if multiple crabs are eaten? In other words, if toxins are below the threshold concern, but still detectable, how many crabs or pounds of crab meat are safe to eat for an average adult, a child, or an elderly person? And the second and last question is, what are the long-term effects of low levels of domoic acid exposure?
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
This is Tim Sloan again.
Hi, Tim. Since we can hear you, please come on in.
So happy to be representing everybody out there by myself.
Sorry. Oh, dear. The joys of conference calls.
Going kind of between this and the last main topic area, I'm looking at the third bullet point in number 2, what's the scientific rationale between the action levels for domoic acid toxicity in seafood? And I think that does fall into number 3 as well. Obviously, there was great concern among the fleet this year about whether the 30 parts per million standard was accurate and appropriate. And we did hear some discussion that the 30 parts is based on a 300 parts per million level when people start to get sick. And I think another question that really bears some investigation is whether that order of magnitude safety barrier is appropriate in these sorts of situations, and I wonder if you guys are looking into that at all.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. We're definitely getting into, within the FAQs of how that 30 ppm was set, getting into comparing how that relates to what other countries' standards are, if we're on par with that or if we're different. Getting into the explanation of how they came up with the 300, as you alluded to, ppm as the place where people start to see impacts to their health. And the precautionary, as you alluded to, the precautionary measure of basically taking it down to the 10th factor. So we're definitely getting into kind of breaking that down of how that came about, but not getting into necessarily whether or not it is or isn't appropriate. I think that at the end of the day, that's something for industry and regulators to kind of figure out what their how much risk they want to take, sort of thing.
Thanks, Erin and Tim. It's really wonderful. Thank you. Again, inviting folks *6, unmute your phone, and potentially to use the unmute yourself using the mute button on your phone technology itself, and then a reminder that you also need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Erin, would it be appropriate so our plan is to go through this fourth theme, and then Rochelle will try and open up the lines so that we have it in open mode to see if we can hear a few more voices. But as a first step, would you mind sharing the questions under the fourth theme?
Happy to. So the last chapter is California's Fishery and Seafood Toxin Management. There are several questions under this header. What agency leads California's seafood biotoxin monitoring and sampling programs, and how are these programs funded? What are the roles of the various California agencies involved in HAB response, monitoring, and fisheries management? How do HAB and fishery management measures in California, specifically for Domoic acid and Dungeness crab, link to what is being done in Oregon and Washington? How does Dungeness crab management differ between the recreational and commercial sector, and what is the rationale for this difference? What do the differences in management between the commercial and recreational sectors mean for opening and closing each sector? E.g., why did the commercial sector have to wait while the sports sector was opened? When will testing for the 2016-2017 season commence for Dungeness crab? Why was the two-system test required most of the time and a one-test system at other times? Describe CDFW's rationale for opening the District 10 line without the two consecutive clean tests required elsewhere. And last, what's next for California? How can interested individuals get involved?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So perhaps, Rochelle, if you wouldn't mind trying to toggle through to see if we could open the lines fully, that would be wonderful. Yes, perfect. So just a reminder to folks that are not on mute that we can currently hear you. So there will be a lot of background noise, but this is in an effort to try and get anyone who has been trying to get through the call that hasn't been able to be able to hear their voice. Anyone that wants to ask a question or anything that we haven't been able to hear your insights thus far on? Yeah, so it's unfortunately, we can absolutely hear you. It's breaking up a little bit. A reminder again to folks on the call to put their phones on mute or to press *6 if we, okay, let's just try. I heard a gentleman's voice. Let's just go for it.
Yeah, pick me up, Kelly.
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Bob, and I'm sorry, I don't know if this is going to work. So there's just this background noise. I think it was Bob from a harbor. If you have the capacity to email us at info@strategicearth.com, we'd be so excited. Rochelle, did you toggle through? Rochelle, maybe try the star.
I'm going to just try moving it over one more to
that sounds great. Hang on.
mode.
That fabulous individual.
Okay, we should be moved over.
Thank you. So we'd love to try it again. I'm sorry. Thanks, everyone, for your patience with these technical excitement. We really appreciate it. I believe that there was a gentleman who was calling in. Can we hear you? Okay. Oh, yes. Hello?
Charlie Cohen, Santa Barbara, California.
Hi, is someone there?
Yes, that was Charlie from Santa Barbara.
Hi, Charlie from Santa Barbara.
Hi, question going back to 1987. Do you guys have that information on hand about who got sick, who died? There was 2 people died in 1987. I think it was Prince Edward Island. What that mussel they were eating and what the acid level?
Thanks so much for that question, Charlie. Ocean Science Trust, are you considering data about sort of impacts to human health and maybe this particular Prince Edward Island experience that Charlie was mentioning?
Hi, this is Hayley. Yeah, so that's part of the science that the I guess that's the data that set the action level, so they use that to set the current action levels. And then the Dungeness crab viscera action levels were set at a later date. So we do go into the science supporting that and kind of break that down, how the calculation was set, and walk people through the data that was collected based on the Canada events, and then how it got to be the current action levels that are implemented across the 3 West Coast states. So we do walk people through that, and we'll provide a lot of information about the science supporting that current action levels. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Hayley. Thank you, Charlie. Other thoughts from members on the call?
Yes.
Hello.
This is
Hi. We have 2 folk, so I'm just going to invite one of you to go first and the other to be graciously patient. One of you, feel free. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
This is Rick from Santa Barbara.
Hi, Rick. How are you? Welcome.
I'm fine. Yes, just to go back on the questions on number 3 on the 30 parts per ppm. I just wanted to find out, have the testing on the meat for rock crab, strictly for rock crab, are they being monitored in the sense where we are going to be looking at a 30 parts per million on the meat or just on the viscera?
Great question, Rick. Ocean Science Trust, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in the FAQ, we do go into that. It is currently 30 parts per million is for the viscera, and the 20 parts per million is for the meat itself. And those action levels were, we'll go into more detail about that. They're safe for, it says it in the FDA regulations for Dungeness crab viscera specifically, but the state takes that as applying it to crustaceans in general. So the FAQ will go into that. So thank you for that question.
That's great. Thanks, Rick. I think sorry.
Excuse me.
Rick, was that a follow-up question?
Yes. The second question to that is, are we going to be looking at being able to market the crab after processing? What I'm talking about marketing is being given or sold to the customer, not to the wholesaler or the processor, but able to give the customer a live crab with the viscera removed, as long as the meat has not, or the advisory has not met a 20 parts per million in the meat.
Ocean Science Trust, thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's something that we've definitely heard from other folks in the community, and I think that that's something that you're not going to see reflected in this frequently asked questions document. I think it's something that is more about working with the Department of Public Health and Department of Fish and Wildlife to decide if that's something that they're going to allow from a regulatory point of view, that it's not really something that the science can speak to. And I think some of those conversations have been going on with the Department of Public Health and some of the rock crab fishermen, but I think that you'll start to hear more from the state going forward on topics like that.
Thanks, Erin, and thank you again, Rick, for your questions. There was, I believe, another person who was trying to ask a question at the same time as Rick.
Yeah, hi. My name is Rob. I'm with the California Fisheries and Seafood Institute.
Hi,
Good
Rob.
morning.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Throughout the call, first of all, Wayne said, how do we assure the consumer when they're at a market that the crab is safe, for example? I think he said crab. It's either wholesome or it's adulterated, right? So if it's in the market, it should be presumed that it is wholesome. Secondly, with regard to domoic acid in fish and seafood, please keep in mind that domoic acid is not in most fish and seafood. It's in certain fish and seafood, but the preponderance of seafood is not affected by domoic acid.
Thank you for all of that. That's really wonderful, Rob. Thank you. I would like to take a moment and just highlight a few thoughts that we've also heard from via email. Wayne Kotal emailed again and asked if there's any way to forecast what the domoic acid levels are going to be moving forward. Is there a larger factor like El Nino versus La Nina cycles which help increase the opportunity to cause this problem? What are the causes of the increased levels? And I guess I wonder from Ocean Science Trust, is it helpful to respond to some of those in this moment, or are those good questions to capture in the key themes summary?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
And just one moment, if you're not speaking, if you could please put yourself on mute, please press *6.
Yeah, I think, Rochelle, everybody's trying. Yes, and. Sorry, Ocean Science Trust, please go right ahead.
Oh, sure. Happy to start to answer that a little bit, I guess, give a little bit of a teaser. So otherwise we could spend another hour talking about it. But also just want to acknowledge you, Rob, and thank you for your points. I think you'll see a little bit of what you mentioned reflected in the FAQ as well. And so to the point of predicting HABs, there's definitely some work in the FAQ that's going to talk about that. In terms of how much can be predicted, I think that the short answer is to say that nobody has a crystal ball, but given climate change and some of the other factors that you mentioned, that we can expect to see more unusual events like this occurring. With that being said, it would be, like I said, no one has a crystal ball, but it would be unlikely to see an event just like this happen again year after year. History hasn't really repeated itself that way. And so I think that's the short version of the long answer.
And this is Tom Maloney. One element we've discussed is the need for more data to help resolve any predictive models that are developed. And so that's something that I think we'll be talking about with the OPC, the need for better monitoring and more higher resolution of monitoring moving forward.
Thanks so much, Tom. We also received some information or a sort of a comment and maybe question from Jim Anderson by way of Tim Sloan. Thank you both. Please make sure the fleet has relevant season opening information, presence of HABs, domoic acid, action levels, advisories, etc. by October, so the fleet can make a business plan for the season. So that's a sort of a comment. And then the question, is there research on domoic acid toxicity in humans that comes from exposure via Dungeness crab specifically, as opposed to from other animals like shellfish?
Great, thank you so much for that. So with regards to the first part, in terms of being able to have all the information that you guys need to make your plans, we, of course, at Ocean Science Trust think that would be great too, but it's totally outside of our purview. However, we'll of course make sure that we pass along that request to folks at agencies. And I'm also hopeful that the August 10th Joint Committee on Fisheries and Aquaculture hearing will be a place for that type of comment, but also information to be shared both ways. Secondly, in regards to your question in terms of research on domoic acid, I can give a quick answer, and I'll let Hayley jump in here. There's no necessarily specific research on humans. No one is sitting, to our knowledge, has volunteered to start eating the toxic crabs, but there is a lot of research going on by NOAA in relation to mice, and you will see a little bit of that from in the FAQ. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, there's some longer-term studies in native populations as well, so populations that have seen domoic acid for years and years and years. And there's also a study in bowhead whales that's happening in NOAA's Southwest Fisheries Science Center, so they're looking longer term, are these HAB events increasing in frequency? So like Erin said, you can't just go spoon feed people domoic acid and study their responses. So all of kind of the information in humans have come from these toxicity events. So we'll kind of lay the landscape of what the existing science is and kind of what the future science is in longer-term studies for domoic acid. So thank you for that question.
Fabulous. Thank you. So I just want to acknowledge, just being mindful of time, that we're just coming up to 10:50. We have a few other agenda topics that we wanted to quickly discuss, and so I'd like to segue that way, but I just want to also acknowledge that there were these technical difficulties. It sounds like folks are able to get through now, which is wonderful. So two things. One, we have another question that came in for the HAB FAQ list. I'm just going to read aloud, but would request that we maybe pause on responding. This is from Steve Rumrill, Dr. Steve Rumrill. What is the relationship between domoic acid levels in Dungeness crab and red rock crab, and with the other shellfish that are typically monitored for biotoxin concentrations, such as razor clams or mussels? Sorry, I hate to say one thing and then do another. Is there a brief answer to that or thought on that, Ocean Science Trust? I don't mean to skip away from it.
That's a great question.
Okay, perfect.
Just in short, that the domoic acid is pseudonychia, is the phytoplankton, and so you typically see the lower species on the food chain as the first to show levels of domoic acid, and then crabs eat those species, and so it kind of, you'll first see it in mussels and other bivalves, and then it goes kind of up the food chain, and you'll start to see it in species higher up the food chain. So as far as which have more, there's information that the Department of Public Health collects that you can see the levels when they go sample. So we will provide some of that information.
Wonderful. Thank you. And so I think one of the things we just want to acknowledge and say out loud is that when we put together the summary from today's call, in addition to the recording being made available, that we will sort of beef up or add a little bit more detail to the responses that Ocean Science Trust provided as an additional source of information for folks that were on the call and folks that couldn't make the call. So just want to acknowledge that. Also, just wanted to say, again, being mindful of folks' time, if we get to the 11 o'clock mark to adjourn the meeting, that Ocean Science Trust team members are more than welcome, or more than interested, everyone is more than welcome to stay on the call for another 15, 20, 30 minutes as need be. If there are additional questions that we weren't able to get to because of the technical difficulties, Ocean Science Trust can hang on the call for a little bit longer. Just confirming, OST, that's still okay with you, yes?
Yep, that's great. We'd be happy to.
Perfect. Fabulous. So just want to put that out there, again, being mindful of time. So wondering if we could, so thanks everyone for the really thoughtful questions and your patience in being able to ask them, and would love to now sort of circle back to our agenda and maybe have Erin give a brief overview of the Science Advisory Team working group phases and the work that they are up to.
Great, thanks, Kelly. So briefly, I just want to state again that this frequently asked questions document, we've got a target date of providing something for folks to take a look at in advance of the August 10th Joint Committee on Fisheries and Aquaculture legislative hearing. So we're hoping to have something out to the public by August 5th. And also want to say that questions not addressed within this initial frequently asked questions document will be retained and revisited as part of our longer-term work on this issue, which we'll discuss in just a moment. And want to say that we might need additional expertise to address this larger list. And then, just as Kelly said, we want to talk a little bit about the second product, the second part of this work, which is being developed by an Ocean Protection Council Science Advisory Team working group. So again, this is the start of the conversation. So in addition to developing the frequently asked questions document, Ocean Science Trust was asked to convene a science working group. This working group will develop a scientific guidance document and options for understanding harmful algal bloom events in California and their impact on fisheries. And additionally, the working group will identify the ways that they could add capacity as an academic community to the state's existing HAB monitoring and sampling efforts in order to better respond to HAB events in the future. This work is planned to take place in 2 phases. There is the short-term working group that we are working with right now. This group is framing and scoping the scientific issues related to harmful algal blooms with a focus on how the academic community can build capacity into state programs. And more information about this group and details can be found on our webpage in the same spot that we've mentioned a couple of times at oceansciencetrust.org. The document that you would want to go to learn more about this group is the scope of work document. The target release date for the short-term scientific document is September 30th of 2016, and the working group product will continue to be developed after the Joint Committee on Fisheries and Aquaculture hearing to allow for any changes or feedback from this engagement to be incorporated. And then the second phase, which I mentioned earlier, is a long-term working group. So after the short-term working group releases their findings, we'll work with an expanded working group on questions that will kind of take longer to scope and longer to work on. So likely questions that are more in the nature of how can we better predict HAB events, so things that we can't quite answer in a very short amount of time before August 10th. And again, information about this lives on our website, and we're always happy to talk more with folks about this. And then lastly on our agenda is the next steps and additional process details. Looking ahead, Ocean Science Trust is hoping to host a public roundtable discussion to be held in advance of the Joint Committee on Fisheries and Aquaculture hearing on August 10th. So stay tuned for more details about this. This will offer another opportunity for Ocean Science Trust to share how the frequently asked questions have evolved, an opportunity to talk about things after you've had a chance to see the final product, as well as provide any updates on the short-term scientific working group guidance document. And so with that, as we mentioned, we are going to be staying on the line if folks are interested. I think another, in addition to hearing more about the frequently asked questions document, we're hoping to hear about ways such as this or other ways that we can continue to engage with you on this topic and in this discussion, the things that work for you. And so should I turn it back to you, Kelly and Rochelle?
I think that maybe what we could do, so I love the tacking on questions about the way to continue engaging with the fishing industry and others that are interested in this topic, perhaps as part of the discussion after 11 o'clock for folks that can stay on. Erin, would you be comfortable perhaps just sort of wrapping things up? I'm not sure if there's just a few other sort of last moment thoughts that you want to share, and then we can open the lines back up and continue the discussion for those that can stay.
Yeah, that's great. So I will give the formal wrap-up, and then we can continue on. So first of all, we just really, really want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their schedules to join us for this call today. We hope that some of this was helpful and that this discussion was valuable to you. I know it was for us. We also want to thank the working group members on the scientific working group for providing the state with scientific guidance. We want to thank the Ocean Protection Council for providing funding, and we also want to thank the Interagency Hub Task Force for assisting us, but also asking us to do this work. We will be sharing the recording and a high-level summary over the various distribution lists following this call. And as we mentioned, especially given the technical difficulties, please feel free to reach out by email or phone, and we can hope to wrap some of that up into the summary that we provide back out. So there's another opportunity for us to answer more questions in advance of the hearing. We really look forward to sharing with you the frequently asked questions document on August 5th. And the working group document recommendations later in September. We hope that you'll stay tuned for more details about a roundtable discussion in early August. We'd love to engage with you guys in that way if that's of interest to you. And again, just want to one more time mention our website, oceansciencetrust.org. That's where you can find all of the information that we talked about today. as well as email information for Hayley and I. With that, it will be the official close of the call, but like we mentioned, we're going to stay on the line for another 20 or 30 minutes if folks are interested in talking more about the FAQs or hearing any feedback on ways you would like for us to continue to engage with you around HABs and fisheries in California. And thank you again, everybody. We really appreciate your time and patience with this call.
Wonderful. Erin, thank you so much. So we are still in Q&A mode. For folks that are able to stay on the call after 11 o'clock, we would welcome you to press *6 to unmute yourself, and of course, using your mute button on your phone, making sure that's unmuted as well, and would welcome your thoughts on additional frequently asked questions, ideas, concerns that you may have around the conversation that we've had thus far, as well as if you have any feedback on the value of a conference call like this, future calls, webinars, say in-person roundtable discussions. I think that options are open. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the best way to keep an open line of communication and dialogue with you all moving forward. Thoughts from the group or whoever is still here?
Hello, Steve Rumrell here from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Can you hear
me?
Hi,
Steve. I absolutely can. Lovely to hear your voice.
Excellent. Good. Well, thanks very much for reading the question that I submitted by email. And I just wanted to let you folks know that up here in Oregon, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Shellfish Program is gathering information, collecting samples, and conducting analysis to try to address that question that I submitted, specifically looking at the relationship between domoic acid levels in crab, red rock crab, Dungeness crab, and razor clams, mussels, bay clams, anchovies, etc. And so we're trying to generate some information this spring and summer to address those questions that are directed our way. Those data sets will certainly make available to your working group and to the science group to help answer that question if that is, a concern for you.
That is terrific. Thank you so much. We would love to learn more and collaborate more.
Do you have a contact for Oregon within the Department of Agriculture?
Not with Oregon's Department of Agriculture, no. So we'd be happy to be put in touch. I think the more that we can learn about what other folks are doing and put that in the context of what California is doing and share that information would be great.
Yeah, because in particular, our shared region and shared Dungeness crab fishery crosses the boundary between the states, and we'd certainly like to participate with you as you move forward in this action.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yep.
We received some additional thoughts and questions from Wayne Kotow. The harmful algal bloom is being portrayed as more of an anomaly than a common occurrence. We had another anomaly in the last 2 years with the influx of the red tuna crab in Southern California, since they are hitting the inshore area and becoming food for many species. Is there another issue of other species being affected? Has this been tested yet? Thoughts from Ocean Science Trust on that?
Thank you, Wayne. This is a terrific question. I will give you a two-part answer. So in terms of the first part of your question and comment here, that this HAB is being portrayed of more of an anomaly than a common occurrence, I think that the response to that is that it's this particular combination of events creating this particular HAB event is perhaps an anomaly, but that HAB events in general occurring with more frequency is not an anomaly. So it's more about the specifics of each event is going to be hard to know in advance of which perhaps HAB species and which toxin occurring in which geographic area impacting what species. but that HAB events in general are going to be occurring with greater frequency, with these anomalous bits and pieces contained within them, is something to be expected. And then to the second part, this is absolutely something that's been posed to the scientific working group. So the second part of your question about, is this going to be impacting other species? Should we be caring about it? Should we be testing it? Those are really important questions that we can probably give some general answers to in the document that's coming out September 30th, but that the longer-term working group can perhaps dive in more deeply if this is something that community members and state agencies feel like they want a working group to work on over the course of the next year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erin. Other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns from folks on the call related to what we've been talking about for the last hour, as well as any feedback or insights on the best way Ocean Science Trust can continue to maintain an open line of communication with the fishing industry and others who are interested in this topic. A reminder to press *6 to unmute yourself and to use the mute button on your phone to make sure that that's unmuted as well. And I'm wondering, Rochelle, if you could use your magical fingers to toggle through, I'm a little nervous, but maybe toggle through one last time to open the lines and just see if there's anybody else out there looking to chat.
Hello?
Hi, who's this? Oh, we have.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please go ahead.
I'd like to know, other than the contact at CDPH, who is monitoring on the side, Santa Barbara crab, the rock crab fishery here at the sample of DA.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I have your question right. There's a bit of background noise, but I think you were asking who is collecting and monitoring rock crab in the Santa Barbara area. Do I have that right?
Yeah, besides the CDPH.
Got it. In addition or besides the Department of Public Health. Ocean Science Trust, is that something that you know?
Sure, we can fact check ourselves after this call, but to our knowledge, folks sampling rock crab specifically in that area is only being done by the Department of Public Health. In terms of academic community monitoring, they're focused more on conducting water samples and looking for these species, but also their toxins being present in the water, and less so on collecting individual species. But I would be happy to vet my response further to make it more complete.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Sure. And can we know who we're speaking to, just to make sure we get the answer back to you?
Yes. This is Rick Gutierrez at crabberricksb@gmail.com.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Rick. Thank you so much for that additional question. Other thoughts from folks? I think we have the lines open, so if anybody was having any trouble getting through, we can hear you.
Pick me up, Kelly.
Yeah, who's this?
This is Chris Voss.
Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Thank you. I've been trying to get into I've expressed this concern, and I know it's incorporated into the list of questions that's been put forth, but there was that notion that we haven't been able to literally give humans domoic acid and determine what levels cause them to be sick. But, in fact, we do have a data set from the agencies that indicates that humans have consumed rock crab that, according to past history, was at levels that would have been considered toxic, and no cases of sickness have resulted. So my idea that we look at that data that those agencies have in relationship to the actions they've taken in the past, and in fact, what kind of exposure humans have been subjected to, and the population of crab and lobster and consumers in California, and whether or not we've seen incidents of illness based on those levels. So I believe there is information available to tell us what the risks are to the public based on the past testing that's been done and what we know to be some level of exposure to the public.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. First, would you mind, whatever information you have at your fingertips, would you mind sharing that back with us? And I can reach out to you after this and learn a little bit more. It's not something that's necessarily being addressed within the FAQ right now, but we can try to start to address questions and feasibility of research like that within the FAQ, but potentially after the FAQ comes out, start to answer a question like that and what the feasibility is for a research project such as that.
Okay, what would be at my fingertips knowledge that those agencies have histories of testing crab, and in fact the closures didn't take place at times when the parts per million were high. We know that prior to the closure last summer of the rock crab fishery here in Santa Barbara, and we know that also in relationship to other incidents of testing of lobsters when the fishery closed. So there are examples in the past of these agencies having high levels and they didn't take action that in fact didn't lead to illness. So I think that's the data that you should be thinking about acquiring so that it can be analyzed to determine what level of risk the public faces, give different levels of domoic acid in the shellfish that we eat. I know it's research.
That sounds great. Yeah, we'll definitely follow up with the Department of Public Health and OEHA directly on this question. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else out there still hanging out on the call? Thank you to those that are continuing to listen in and to help inform the discussion. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Is that someone else? Yeah, hi. Oh, we had you. Oh, yes, I can hear you now.
Touching on what Chris Voss just mentioned.
I'm sorry, would you just mind stating your name up front?
Charlie Graham, Santa Barbara.
Hi, Charlie. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. Touching on what Chris Voss just mentioned, I think the big pink elephant in the room, in the corner of the room, is that there's been a long history of domoic acid at levels that are probably above the action level. And there's a long history of people eating crab and lobster and not getting sick. And it seems to me that we've always had domoic acid levels above the action level, but what's different now is the reaction to it.
Yeah, thank you for this.
Anybody want to chime in on that?
That's definitely.
That's where I'm referring to my earlier question regarding the Prince Edward Island incident where 2 people died.
Mm-hmm.
How old were those people? What was their age? What were they eating? Was it oysters? And how much did they eat? And what was the level of domoic acid in those oysters? So now here we are, 2016, and we're talking about 30 parts per million in a crab in Santa Barbara when nobody gets sick at that level. So I'm wondering if there's anybody looking into that?
Sure. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for giving us some additional questions in terms of kind of stepping everybody through in the FAQ what happened with the incident where the 2 folks died. We can look into a little bit more, the 3 folks died. Look into a little bit more if we can find information on just exactly those questions and say what the age range was, what they ate, et cetera. And in terms of some of the other stuff, we'll definitely, like I mentioned, reach out to the Department of Public Health and OEHA to learn a little bit more. And, you know, our role in this in terms of Ocean Science Trust is to help provide some of the scientific bits of information to support those kind of more regulatory conversations between you guys and management going forward. But we'll definitely do our best to try to suss out what information is out there that we can pull into the FAQ.
Steve,
thank you very much.
From Oregon. Can you guys hear me here?
Yes, Steve, please go ahead.
So those are important questions, of course, but it's my feeling that those will be addressed under that 3rd bullet on theme 2. And that question reads, what's the scientific rationale behind the action levels for domoic acid toxicity in seafood? That, I assume, would be wide-ranging and would discuss the action levels, alert levels, and also the data that has been derived from the previous events where there was harm. Is that true? That's a big question. I think it's likely that the answer hopefully will come from that bullet 3.
Ocean Science Trust, does that make sense, what Steve just has outlined, that in theme 2 or chapter 2, domoic acid in California fisheries, bullet 3, that will be where some of the conversations. Perfect. Sorry, I'll stop repeating things.
No, that's perfect. Yes, that's exactly right. And as I said, it's very helpful to hear folks expand on what their questions are related to things so that we can answer in a detailed and appropriate way. So just, you know, responding to what we heard, now we can make sure that our language includes details such as how old folks were and finding that information, what they ate and how much, and making sure that that's included in our response. So the more ways that we can understand how to answer the questions best is really, really helpful for us.
It was an elderly subset of people up there that got sick.
Thanks, Charlie. Thank you. Other questions, comments, thoughts from those that are still on the call, building on what we've just heard from a number of fishermen and others in these past moments or earlier in the call, as well as whether or not a call like this is helpful, if there are other ways that you would prefer, or in addition to learn information about the work Ocean Science Trust and the OPC SAT working group and the Interagency Task Force and others, how they're sort of the work that they're doing and the progress that they're making, other ways to keep folks in touch with that information and informed about those steps.
And if you don't have suggestions, we'd love to also hear how you guys heard about the call. And that way we know that, you know, what we're doing is working or it's not. So please, you know, let us know how you heard about the call and, you know, how we can get more information as it becomes available.
Thanks for sure. So thoughtful. Any additional thoughts from folks? Is someone there? I hear some background noise, but it could just be someone listening in, which is okay too. Someone trying to come through? Okay. Ocean Science Trust, on your end, anything else that you would like to say out loud or highlight in this moment?
Just to say thank you again, and thanks to folks for staying on the line and finding ways to get information out to us and to get questions to us on this call. We are always super happy to hear questions, positive and negative feedback to make this a better product and process for everyone, especially you guys. So you can always find my email and our contact information on our website, oceansciencetrust.org. I could spell out my name for the email. It's long. It's Erin Ramanujam, ERRIN .RAMANUJAM @calost.org. But like I said, all of that is on our website, and we're just really excited to have had everybody on the call today and to start the conversation, and we look forward to talking more.
Wonderful. Thanks, Oh, please. Is that someone?
Just a general comment of thanks for the work you guys are doing to try to work this out, and I appreciate the Ocean Science Trust and their role, and in this challenging situation where we want to find a quality solution so that we can continue to fish crabs and the people of the state of California aren't at risk from Domoic acid.
Thanks, Chris. That's very kind words and a wonderful way to, I think, conclude this conference call. Thank you, everyone, for being part of the discussion. And again, this conference call has been recorded, and a summary will be made available in the next week or so. And we look forward to circulating that via the channels that we did to share about this conference call itself. And wish you all a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.